Hi, everybody. I'm Gavin Glakas, and I have the opportunity to sit with Walt Bartman, the founder of the Yellow Barn and of numerous other studios, and ask him some questions today about his life and career and work. And I've really been looking forward to this. Hi, Walt. How are you?
I'm doing great, Gavin. Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking with you this afternoon. I think, it's winter, of course, here, and we're all busy inside. So this is a great time to have a little interview like we're going to do today.
Absolutely. This is going to be lots of fun. Walt and I have spent plenty of time talking about art, and now we're going to share it with all of you. Um, Walt Bartman teaches landscape, still life, and figure painting classes and workshops here and abroad. His career spans 4 decades. He received a Master's of Fine Arts in Painting and Art History from American University, and he was awarded a Fulbright Scholarship to study in Belgium and Holland. His work is represented by the Bridge Gallery in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. And that is the very, very tip of the iceberg. I think that many people watching this, well, people will know Walt from all different facets of his career and his work. I think a lot of people watching this might only know you, only, by the way, being in quotes, from your work and your teaching at the Yellow Barn and at your studio in Frederick and your studio in Tillman and your studio in Oatlands. And they may not know about the work that you did at Whitman High School, which is the way that we met. So this part of your career obviously means a lot to me because this is how we got to know each other, and this is how I became a professional artist. That Walt built a program at Whitman over the course of 25 years?
30 years.
30 years, okay. Over the course of 30 years. That when I tell people about it, when I was in college and when I was getting started as an artist, and to this day, and they say, well, how'd you get started? And did you teach art in high school? I very sort of offhandedly say, I went to this high school with this incredible art department, and it really was, it was recognized basically as being the best art program in the country. And the teacher was sort of recognized as the best art teacher in the country. And I just kind of state that very matter-of-factly because it's true. And I remember at the time, I think it was when I was going there, you were featured on the Today Show. And for years before I ever got to Whitman, I would just meet people, my parents' friends and just people in Maryland. And they would, they'd say, oh, you like to draw? Well, that's great that you're going to Whitman. They have that great art teacher there. And Walt built a program where he got, I'm sure you might know the numbers or there are numbers somewhere, but he got more kids scholarships over 30 years. And more kids won national awards than any other program in the country. And he had just legions of people whose lives he directly impacted in the way of scholarships and awards and things like that. But one thing that I think is really important is that he really built a community and kind of infused generations of kids with really great expectations for what they could do with their life, regardless of whether they pursued art in any capacity or not. And I meet people all the time who went through it. I mean, who I might have missed them by 10 years, one way or the other. But as soon as we established that connection, that we were part of that Bartman community, it's not, nobody says, oh, you studied art at Whitman. Oh, you were a Bartman kid. As soon as we established that, then we're immediately in this community and a lot in common. And just for me, the main thing that we all do have in common is that we went through something really intense and really overwhelmingly positive, where we were exposed to something, art, but the endeavors to learn and to create great art at a very young age that really kind of paved the way for hopefully the way that we live our lives. So for those of you who don't know about Walt's accomplishments at Whitman, they were incredible. The Festival of the Arts at Whitman, I'm sure, started off in the art room with a bunch of paintings up on the wall when Walt got there. By the time I graduated, it would be in a gym. Thousands of people would come to it. They would sell work, lots and lots of artwork. It was an incredible event. You'd see signs all over Bethesda for it. Walt really built something at Whitman, and then he retired, and he had already built the Yellow Barn. But in addition to being a great teacher and painter, I think of Walt as a great builder. So that's something that I think would be interesting to talk about today. So maybe you can tell us just why you decided to start teaching and how you got there.
Yeah, it's really an interesting story because, my life has been centered around it. And actually, I'm going on 50 years of teaching now, which is hard to believe. So it's when we talk about that, I think I was fortunate. I was young. I was probably around 14 years of age, and I studied in a junior high school where the teacher kind of selected me to go into Pittsburgh and study with a man by the name of Joe Fitzpatrick. And I can't thank him enough because he's the one that set me on my way. Okay, just like I've tried to work with a lot of students over the years to set them on their ways. And I think that he was known because he taught thousands in Pittsburgh and really was an energetic, enthusiastic, and inspirational guy. And he went on to, what I can tell you, some famous people, Andy Warhol being one of them, Phil Pearlstein, were in those classes.
Oh, wow.
So really, it was very interesting to have that background. But Pittsburgh was a great city because it really, encouraged the arts, and I was fortunate enough to be able to be recognized and had that support. So I think, with that, I always had in the back of my mind, art's going to be my thing. I'm never going to do anything else. But it's kind of a funny story how things evolve. But eventually, I wound up being a teacher and interviewing at Walt Whitman High School, which really was very interesting because when I got there, I didn't know anything about Walt Whitman. But when I took the job, so it was like luck because I had great students, you being included in that group, of course.
Barely. I barely scraped into that
Well,
category.
truthfully, you were one of the ones that I would never forget ever. All right.
I'm sure that's
I
true.
think this is when we talk in those, our lives have been really intermingled, and honestly, to see you as another generation of really outstanding. I mean, your ability is known as well all over, and I think you've established some things that just make me feel very proud to have had the opportunity to teach you as well. So that's where teaching was my part of my life. It is now. I mean, I'm still teaching 5 classes a week, and having many students. So it's been fun, and I'm learning every day. So that's what it's about. And I think that's for everyone, not only the teacher but the students. So I think
Well, one thing in that regard, in terms of your recent teaching endeavors, it amazes me that you clearly don't have to teach, and you're teaching a ton, and you obviously enjoy it, and you obviously get a tremendous amount of energy from it. So that's been really inspirational for me to watch. How did you start the Yellow Barn? Actually, I don't know the answer to this. I just know that you had a full-time job. You had a family, and you started this school, I'm assuming at nights and on weekends. So tell us how you did it.
Yeah, the Yellow Barn is a really, when you talk in terms of stories, it's a book, all right? Because over the 25 years or so that we've had the Yellow Barn studio there at Glen Echo, I can't thank the people enough who helped to support me to have that, make that studio a vision for the community, a place for everyone to come and actually take classes and benefit from the kind of programs that we have there. But I think that what happened one day is that I actually was offered a residency to apply for residency at Glen Echo Park. And when I did, and I got the residency, I got this very dilapidated old car barn that probably would have not passed inspection at that point. All right. And I was thinking to myself, how am I going to, okay, I got this residency. Now, what am I going to do with it? And the first thing that hit me was, well, we're going to turn it into a school where we can really have a community. And so I was fortunate. I had Dick Pierce, who I'll never forget and never thank enough, because he was the one who came to my aid. I was in the classroom like you were those days, and I said, well, I've got this studio now. Is there anybody who wants to help me get this place cleaned up? And Cara Beers, of course, in the back of the room said, my daddy will help you clean up the studio. So, from then on, it just came together little by little with a lot of help from a lot of people. And, it's been working now, it's 25 years or more. And we're seeing a faculty of about 35 instructors, which when I started, it was myself, Bonnie Lundy, and Helen Corning. And I think, it's just grown as far as number of students from probably a handful to, now, like we said, at this time during the pandemic, about 500 students taking classes at the Yellow Barn. So it's really a great community. People are inspired to be part of it. And my job, I think, with that is to try and keep that kind of opportunity for students and the community to take advantage of what we have there. So it's worked out beautifully. And I think, with the help of everyone, like I said, it's managed to become a reality.
When did you turn the studio into a gallery where students could have shows of their work? Because that's something that I think a lot of people just absolutely love. I mean, I had my first gallery show in the Yellow Barn Gallery, as I'm sure tons of people did. And I mean, that's something that a lot of my students love doing. And a lot of people who have gone on to show elsewhere got their start there. I mean, how did you come up with that idea, and how did you get it off the ground?
Well, I'm always coming up with ideas. All right. So that was one of them that came up when we were running classes on the weekends, but we weren't getting very many students at that point. It was early in the start of the Yellow Barn. And, since you've been teaching on the weekends, and we've had really full classes, and you've, been one of the teachers that's really made the weekend really work. But prior to that, there weren't many things taking place in the Yellow Barn. And I thought, well, let's start trying to have a weekend show of the people who are taking classes here. And it blossomed to where we offer like 50 shows a year in the Yellow Barn. And we've been doing it for like almost 24 years or so. All right. So it really, thousands have had shows at the Yellow Barn. And I'm really proud of the fact that we were able to give opportunity to people like you to go on and get your work out there and have people get to know who you are.
It was immensely helpful when I was starting, and I see how enthusiastic everybody is, because I'm always in there on Saturdays and I see people, getting ready and then running their shows. It's just a great event every week.
Yeah.
How did you personally start drawing and painting?
I had an Aunt Beezy Weezy who used to put me on her lap and draw little cats for me. All right. With little triangle heads and,
I've never heard this.
All right. And I'll never forget that. I think that was one of the first parts of it. But honestly, my work always, I just saw my ideas come alive. In other words, they became real. And when I was young, I was able to make little drawings, and they satisfied me as much as anything, as far as I could see my ideas being put out in front of me. And I never stopped. I think that started, and if anything, that's what the arts do. They give you the opportunity, because you have so many ideas, to be able to express them. So I just got into it. The life became my art, and my art became my life. So it was really an interesting thing to see your ideas emerge. And I think that even now today, with students, I'm doing the same kind of thing, but at the same time, I'm challenging myself to continue to grow that way. So that's how it started.
I didn't realize that. And when did you start painting?
I started painting at 14. I got a little painting set, all right, and sat down and copied a little idea from one of the newspapers that I thought was interesting, and learned how to paint there, and then really got into, it was really interesting, got into really abstract painting to begin with, and it was more almost mechanical. I grew up in Pittsburgh, so it was like gears and things like that, machines, all right. and workers. The very first painting I ever sold when I was like 15 was some steel workers that I had invented, imagination out of what I saw every day. So I really lived that life. And I think, then it had just evolved into everything that I do now.
Well, can we take a look at some of your paintings?
Yeah, let's take a look at them. I think I have to run the show here, so we'll take a look at the PowerPoint and we can kind of talk. You're seeing the PowerPoint right now?
Yeah.
So, okay, so we're going to start from the beginning.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit, obviously painting plein air, painting outside, in nature, and experiencing what you're depicting in real time is a huge part of your work. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about, one, how you do that, and then two, sort of why that is your approach.
I think that it's interesting. When I was younger, everything was came about from my imagination, and then eventually I started painting from life. And when I painted from life, uh, I saw things that I had never seen before, especially color. I started getting involved in color, and I felt that I was connected more to color when I was outside. But then I got into just the nature of the landscape and what the meaning of the landscape was. And I feel that is what I shared with most of the students of Whitman. We did a figurative work and we did a lot of landscape, we did a lot of still life, but, and also we concentrated on inventing paintings as well. So it wasn't a real focus, but I think that being in the present, it gave me ideas. And this particular painting here, I painted Tillman Island because I have a studio there. This is one of the things that I can tell you. The sunsets there are so inspirational that, I can't pass up painting a sunset each night, but this is one looking down the Narrows. And, it's more, not necessarily, it is all realistic. It is about the emotion that I'm feeling as well. So I think that I try to bring both that representation, but also the underlying feeling that I'm getting from the colors. And that's one of the things that I tell people. I do paint by feeling color, and I think that it's the thing that it's almost very musical. So I really hear the music, as Debussy said when he said, "Nothing's more musical than a sunset."
Hmm.
So I think that this is one of the things that I've come to love. So they become incredibly personal. This particular painting right now is in Africa. It's in the American Embassy in Malawi.
Oh, how cool.
Imagine that, all right?
Oh, that's
So,
awesome.
yeah, so this is one of the ones, and and it is of Tillman, so which is a very special place near where we all live, the Chesapeake Bay. So I think that's how I've evolved with these paintings.
Yeah, it's a beautiful painting, and I've been there with you, and just the sky and the water and the light and the reflection and the boats, and you're definitely able to communicate, in my opinion, not just individual pieces but a whole, and not just the way something looks but the way something feels, and the way one could experience a part of their life taking place in a situation like that. So I think it is really inspirational to hear you talk about this.
Well, I think that also, Gavin, I think that the other part of this is all painted in one session.
Mhm.
And this is a big painting. This is like a 36 by 48.
And that sun's not sitting still, is it?
And that sun's not sitting still. All right. So that people have to understand how fast you're working and how aggressive you are and what your thoughts are taking place at the time. And I think that when I paint, I'm in the flow. So I
Hmm.
think that that's one of the things about painting plein air, is that you do get that change and you have to learn how to deal with it and make an idea from all that change. So yeah, so that one is Tillman. This one, the painting that I did here is right from when you walk out of my door right now where I am in my studio. If I come out my door, this is what I see. All
Hmm.
right. And I would see this every morning when we moved here. That I just thought was fascinating, just as as a subject, but I'm the kind of person that takes a subject. I don't have to go very far, so I don't have to go on vacation somewhere to wind up painting. I can really paint right from my neighborhood, and I think the thing right now is it's snowy out and it looks just sort of like this as well. But this is where the kids stood at the bus stop, and I think that
Yeah, that's something I'd like to ask you about actually is about the question of subject matter. One of the major takeaways that I to this day have always kind of taken for granted since you instilled it in us at Whitman is that a real artist, and a real artist, I don't mean an artist with lots of experience. I mean somebody who has declared that they want to create art, whatever level of experience they have. A real artist can take any scene and turn it into a great work of art, and that it's the abstract elements. I mean, I remember internalizing this in high school, and it's the abstract elements of light and color and composition, and those types of things that if we investigate and if we really get interested in, will take any scene at all and at least give us the ability to turn it into something really exciting. Maybe you can talk to us about subject matter a little bit, since you obviously lead your life the way that you're trying to lead it. You have a house in a beautiful part of Maryland. You have a house in another very beautiful part of Maryland. You paint what's around you. But we see a lot of similar elements of subject matter throughout your work. Maybe you can just talk about what you're drawn to and what kind of grabs you.
Yeah, I think that most of the things that speak to me are experiences I have with the moment. And I'm not the kind of person that wants to search out the grand view. I really want a more personal, more intimate view, okay, of things. And I think or at least make the painting have that intimacy in some way, where it's the viewer connecting with the painting. But I think that the elements that you talk about, that are, and both you and myself talk about in our classes, are the elements that I employ. So I try to pass those on to my students. But I think that one of the things that's very important is that you, as an artist, you see something in the subject that probably most people don't see. And I think that this is one of the things that helps you to paint it well. And in the case here, I mean, there's a personal experience day to day with this particular view, just going to the mailbox, that I feel that, like there's an artist by the name of Olaf Host, and you can look him up, but he was the one who just took the same building and he painted it, every day, did 200 paintings of it. He's an artist from Denmark that is a really unique artist, really inspirational to me. And it is about having a romance with your subject. So I think that I'm trying to communicate that to my students, other than just that it's a picture that I don't have any interest in, but the fact that it makes a good painting. I think this is one of the challenges for all of us. And I think that when you do get a painting that speaks in a personal way, I feel that that's important too. But here I wanted to really combine the temperature, the atmosphere, the wetness of the road, the distance, all right, and the color combinations were really very unified. So it was really kind of interesting to have a lot of different mixing here. And I really enjoyed making this painting. As a matter of fact, whenever I look at this view, the unfortunate thing is I always see this painting now. Which is like
It's a great painting.
I have to go beyond this painting. All right. This is and by the way, this painting is in a collection by a collector that's in Shepherdstown, who, I'll just tell you a story. Got to give Ben Summerford a lot of credit for where I am with color. And Ben was the instructor at AU when I went to AU and got my MFA. And it was very interesting, but this collector has a number of my pieces. This is one of the later ones, but one of the first ones he bought, he put in the house is just full of all of the Washington artists, a lot of names you would know. All right. I walked in to have a nice personal tour, and I looked at the painting, and it was sitting next to Ben Summerford, and he didn't
No kidding.
student of Ben's. All right. So it was really kind of neat. So I think that's where I am with this, is trying to go after the color vibration and just the general feeling that you would get from something like this.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So then
What's
the next one,
what's next?
Yeah.
Well, this one, I love this painting. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how you arrive at the color decisions that you arrive at.
Okay, the thing that I do a lot with painting is, first of all, just look at the warm and cool relationships. But this is a very interesting painting, and I put it in this group for a number of reasons. Not only is it very geometric, which the other one was not as strongly geometric, but this is a painting that is based on the number 3, which I didn't really connect until somebody said, "Do you really sense the number 3 in it?" And that's the basic number for design, believe it or not, and the most powerful number. You see it in the triangular compositions that a lot of artists have used. And so that's how it was composed. But then when I go after color, I go after the warm and cool relationships. And I'm really good at trying to study edges, because I know that the edge becomes the focus. So I really build the painting. I mean, this is a painting that I actually painted standing in water. All right. So it was like I was in about an inch of water right there at the bank, okay, doing this painting. And it was the kind of thing that's going in the town of Middletown, which is the town that I live in. But this is an older painting. This is one of the oldest ones that I have in this group. And I've always come back to this composition because it just really works so well in the kind of divisions that are there. But the colors, I'll just tell you this, I read color by the order by which I see it, and I really paint pattern. So I'm really going after relationships. I'll paint the yellows in first. I'll try to find the yellow, then I'll try and find the blues. In other words, I really do play the relationships of certain colors to one another. But it is that transition from warm color to cool color that feeling in this particular painting. So I think, did I answer that question for you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And maybe you could talk a little bit about your compositions and perhaps tell us, to what extent, even if it's just before you apply paint to canvas, even if you're on the spot, to what extent you sort of plan them out ahead of time, and to what extent they just sort of emerge as part of your process, and how these compositions come about, because they're, to my eye, incredibly successful and incredibly unconventional. I see people who you might consider influences, but I don't see you doing things that the conventional artist would do, and that there are many ways to take these conventional approaches. And you seem to have an approach to composition that is completely unique and completely successful. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think that when I was younger, I had a photographic memory. So I can really see the painting on the canvas. So I start with an image that's in my mind, and I have a good way of kind of structuring the divisions of the rectangle. So I really sense where the strong divisions would be. And I think that the attitude towards spaces, I have this idea that you really deal with the foreground first, and then you move into the background. So I will put the sketch in, but the sketch will be more, and this one, I didn't do any preliminary sketches for this, though. This would be one that looks like it would be very well planned. All right. But the things that I do look for are the areas in the rectangle that are important. And I think each rectangle is different because of its dimensions. But then the other thing is that I look to deal with, just the basic elements that we talk about: the foreground, the middle ground, the background. And I try to establish, like I said, the kind of divisions that you see here. And you can see where those vertical divisions are taking place. And inside each division is an element of whether we want to focus there or we don't. So this one's very explicit. It takes you right to the point of where you're looking. And I think, when you study lines, that's one thing. The other thing is color, and how color will lead you there too. And I do a lot of that because I really sense peripheral vision. So whenever I focus on something, I take into consideration what that peripheral vision is. And I try not to deal with anything and make it too complex if it's outside that realm of the peripheral vision.
Yeah.
So that's how that one worked. And then this is one, Gavin, that I did in the Bahamas. I would run these workshops, and I do them all the time. And I think, we do these international workshops. As a matter of fact, I have one planned for September to Cinque Terre, all right, and Lake Como. But I would go to Elbow Key in January, and I would paint there. And this is one of the ones, Elbow Key now has been devastated by that hurricane, the last one. But the thing that I am after, really, I love color. So I love to interpret, the feeling that I'm experiencing, and to understand it. This is another one that's painted in one session. So I
So
think,
you had mentioned that you like that often you'll start with the yellows and then you'll paint the blues, just sort of go color by
Mhm.
color. Will that change if there's a really dominant color that is usually towards the end of your list of colors that you start with?
I usually start with the dominant one to just measure things off of.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
Right. So I really will look at the dominating color, but also the dominating value. You really have to spend time with looking at your lights and darks as well. But I'm about visual rhythm, and I think that I don't want to, depending upon the size of the canvas, how much information you're going to put in it. All right. If it's a bigger canvas, you probably will work with more information, but not necessarily. But the thing is, if you're working on a small canvas with a guide, you got to really simplify. Otherwise, it just is very hard to look at from a distance. All right. So I think, this is one that's, I went after, I really like the feeling of something like the feeling of water. And I know that paint can communicate that. If anything, what a great material we have to work with as artists, because, it really gives us the range of ideas, and our experiences. And I think this is one of the things that I feel is important in my work, is to give you the feeling of that water, as well as the distance and the play of the color of the light at that time of day, and how the light might diffuse an image. All right. So and then you have to compose it, which I think is the other part of it, which is the challenge, especially like the boat that's coming in with the sail, that wasn't there the whole time, and it's like, when do you put something like that in? Well, you're always keeping your eyes open for anything that can make a painting interesting. But then the other part is just to kind of keep things simple. So you really have to tell yourself you can't have everything, you know. And I like the rhythms. I'm very much, like I said, touch on music. I really feel the rhythm in the painting. So I think that's what I'm after. And
Yeah, it really shows. But what you were saying about just the quality of paint, I think you managed to explore that a lot too. I mean, not only giving the reaching for my mouse pad, the giving a suggestion of the texture of the water in the way that the paint is, rolling around and slopping against each other, and you're physically creating waves of paint while blending the paint together to look liquid, and then juxtaposing it against hard edges in the solids, and building the paint up in some areas and then keeping it much thinner in other areas, which makes for both a very, very just exciting abstract image and experience, and also a very believable suggestion of subject matter. So I mean, yeah, there's a reason why we paint after 600 years or 2000 years or whatever, isn't there?
yeah, and I think one of the things, that we are, we have to design it too at the same time. And that is the challenge, So the more you paint, this, the more you make paintings, the more portraits you paint, the better you get at it, the more you understand it. All right.
Absolutely.
So I think, how many paintings do you want somebody to make before they really understand painting? About 1,000,
Sure, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, I think so, somewhere in there. So then the next one here, this is also an elbow key, and this is called a trumpet cloud in the harbor, and I've never experienced this anywhere else but there, and it's very interesting. I can go there and I can experience it almost every day, and it's really weird, the visual sensation that you get from the place. So I'm very much like you saw with the house painting from across the street. I really think of place as being unique, and each place has its own kind of feeling. And this harbor particularly was like that. So that was the drama. And I challenge, not challenge, I kind of internalize certain artists. This one definitely, Turner was a big influence on me. So do artists influence me? A lot.
Yeah,
And I
maybe you
look
could
at,
tell us about some of your influences. I remember you telling me when we were walking through the Tate Gallery. I remember asking you who your favorite artist was, and at that time you mentioned Turner. This was,
yeah.
back then. But yeah, maybe you can tell us some of your influences.
Well, I think that Turner, when we hit Turner, is a good example. John Ruskin wrote that Turner was his favorite. All right. And it's hard to believe that Ruskin would have chosen Turner as his favorite, because Ruskin believed in nothing but very realistic painting. That's
Right. No improvements upon nature, right?
right. That's how he judged painting.
Hilarious.
But Turner was not like that at all. And what was interesting is that what Ruskin said, the reason was that Turner got closer to God, all right, to God as nature and what nature really feels like, all right. And I feel that too. I feel that there's a level of understanding that you try to reach with the work that goes beyond just the image. And I think that Turner was one of the ones. Degas is another for figure. I think that Degas was able to bring music to his figures, which I maybe because he did the ballet, maybe he was surrounded by music. But honestly, his work really communicates that kind of thing. And I believe, I like him as much. I also like Sorolla for color. I think that Sorolla is one of the outstanding painters, but he also expressed things in somewhat abstract terms. Matter of fact, the early stages of the paintings are really quite abstract, and sometimes he would leave these studies. Thank God that you'd be able to see, because I think they were as valuable as some of the big paintings that he did that are finished. So these are sort of some of the artists that I kind of look at. But the others, I look at Matisse a lot. Matisse is somebody who I think has an inventive quality. And though I don't see Matisse in my work yet, I always constantly think of him. And maybe in my still life, I would get closer to Matisse. But, a lot of the sunsets definitely are inspired by Turner, for sure.
Yeah, he's fascinating to read about, traipsing through the Alps, with his backpack before they had taken the trouble to carve roads, out in the snow, painting in watercolor, and then taking all that experience back to London. Yeah, he's really something.
Yeah, and if you do study him, he is something. I mean, really, you hit it right on the head. I mean, he only went to Venice like 3 times, but he produced like an amazing body of work. All right, it was really kind of interesting. I don't think he spent more than 6 weeks on all his trips, where he was able to do all that work. So he was amazing. This one, this is a one in Maine. So I'm about feeling movement. And I don't like painting things that are too still. So I really do try to create visual rhythm. So water, things like that always interest me. And this is a particular place when you go to Monhegan Island, where you have, a lot of artists. I know that Robert Henry and probably Edward Hopper painted right from this spot. Okay. And so it's really about how you would interpret it relative to them. And this is a good example of what I would say paint can do. So I really do try to bring up the properties of paint, which I think are, the movement and that freshness. So this
One
is,
of the ways that, to my eye, you really show that in this is by juxtaposing the motion and the texture of the wave against the hard, really static rock. And even though you manage to make the rock look like it's alive and in motion, and especially by pulling the foreground so close, with those really sharp edges, you're really you're really showing us a juxtaposition in textures and in motions, that furthers the other one. I mean, if you had just painted the wave with nothing else in the painting, okay, but having that wave crashing against the rock really makes the wave look like it's so much more in motion, like the spray look like spray, the water look like water, the rock look like rock, in a very, very personal sort of non-literal way, which I think is really successful here.
Well, and it was, again, this was painted, very quickly. So it was not like it's a painting that I would come back to. It's not a painting that I could ever reproduce. All right. I mean, I could take some of the ideas that I have here, try to repaint them if I wanted, but it would never come out like the strokes that are there at the moment that you paint them. And I think that's what you build on. You build the language on the relationships that you form in the painting, and you know how much to put in and not overdo it. And I think this is one of the ones that I like because of that simplicity, but also because of that energy. To me, that energy plays an important part. So, and then I like the color,
Yeah, me too.
You can't beat that turquoise, whenever.
Right.
So then this one, this is of course, Great Falls. And I've painted this many times. This is a painting that went on like 2 or 3 years. So we're
Was this a really big one? I think I've seen this one, maybe in your truck.
Yeah, this is also in Africa right now. I'm in a show with some really, I mean, you talk about, they have a group of photographers that are like the top photographers ever, the history of photography. And it's really kind of interesting in that embassy. So you don't realize what the embassies have in them, but they have all these treasures. And now I have these paintings with them, which I think was kind of made me really proud, the fact that I was able to do that. But this one had a lot of struggle for me.
So this was going back multiple times to this location?
Many times. And I would work from it from memory, and then I would work on it, take it back and then come back again. So I would say 2 or 3 years.
So what were some of the struggles that you had with it? What gave you,
I think it was
what
just,
did you have to find solutions for?
Yeah, I think it was coming up with a natural way of seeing it. All right. It was so complex that it was hard to know how long to look at certain areas in the painting. And the light, of course, was changing so much that it would change even the pattern within a certain, short period of time, half an hour, you'd have a totally different pattern of light and dark. So I think that was one of the things, but it came together pretty well. And I like this one too, because of the way it works, and it doesn't feel like it's been labored over.
Not at all.
Yeah, so I think that's it too. So that was the drama in that one. And I like going after dramatic things, but this is a different one. I show this one because I do like painting snow, and that's because I think we see more color with the snow than anything else. But
yeah, those reds and blues, everything that you managed to get into that snow really works. That strong yellow.
Yeah, it's really interesting to try and play those colors against one another, and then control the way you look at the painting. And I think it was, again, this is one of these ones that's right down the street from where I was living, and I just tried to pick what I thought was interesting, which was the line of the street going back toward this old mill, which is no longer there. And, I take advantage of elements in the design, these black and yellow signs, which I think would be very hard to integrate into a design.
I was just thinking that. I was thinking you managed to pull that off with great elan, where if I saw those, I'd think, gosh, I don't know if I need those in my painting. And they make perfect sense here. Those are the type of things that it'd be tough to put in a painting and have them not stand out or just completely decimate the entire thing.
Yeah, and I don't usually leave things out. So I'll try to orchestrate, because I know they have an influence on what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I try to integrate them into the idea without having them be, take over too much control.
That's interesting. So you don't tend to leave out elements of subject matter, but you do obviously reduce the amount of information you're giving us. Yeah. How do you make that decision about when something, the amount of attention you give to something in the painting?
Well, I can read where the contrasts are. That's the first thing. So I really look at where my elements of tension, what I call tension, are. But one of the things, just to call your attention to this diamond-shaped sign on the left, you can see how the colors change. But they change because one side of the sign is leading you into the painting, you definitely don't want the other side to take you out. So I think that I warm up the other side because I feel it is not something that I'm looking at. All right. So I paint it just that way. You got to understand, I keep my eye right on that focal point, which actually is that little black dot on that building is where I
Yep.
was focusing. All right. And everything was actually centered around that tension. So it's really, I also like to pick things like that. I like to pick something really small that your eye will go to.
Uh-huh.
And instead of the thing that we know will control us, this is the piece that I think you can kind of feel how it's resonating. So yeah, I just and then I play colors based on their value in that, but I do a lot with peripheral vision. So I really study what it's like to look within my peripheral vision. And when I'm
You'll
making,
have your eyes focused on one thing, and then you'll be sort of examining with your peripheral vision something else.
yeah, you have to paint what's outside your peripheral vision, just like you're seeing it when you're not looking at it.
Right.
And I think that's where people go have their problems is that they wind up turning their head and looking at the spot, but that's not what you're doing. So I think that's what I try to do is keep the eye in there. And then I like to really bring some tantalizing color like this turquoise that's in the lower left-hand corner.
Yeah.
I think,
Balance against those warms in the road. I mean, it's
yeah,
just a great harmony.
yeah. So you recognize these things,
Of
as
course.
you're working. And then the next one, this is the most simple.
I've always loved this one. I've always been knocked out by this one. I see it all the time at Glen Echo, or I see a poster of it.
Yeah.
And I've always thought this is a great painting.
This is a painting that they actually made into, I painted it for uh, a group called the Barnstormers when they were doing these barn painting tours here in Frederick. And I went and had to go paint this painting. And that actually in the front of it is a bunch of birdhouses and weeds and things like that. And this is one where you come back and you edit and you really look at it and you say to yourself, and the Japanese, one of the things about Japanese painting is keeping things simple, and this is all about simplicity. And I think, and it's all about geometric. But the other part of it that I want people to understand is I read symbolism, and that dark side of the building is the mysterious side. So it's not just a shadow to me. It takes on more meaning. And I think that when we look in going into a dark space, it actually changes our emotions. So I think that there's an interesting emotional play here as well. So this one is a powerful image because of its simplicity.
It's interesting to hear you say that because for somebody who's clearly excited about exploring and pushing color and finding as many vibrant warms and as many vibrant cools as possible, you will often take an entire area like a giant portion of your painting, a giant shadow, and really reduce the amount of information that you're giving us. And in a place where it would be very easy to take a really pure purple or a really pure turquoise almost out of the tube and just stick it right in there and sort of electrify the color in the painting. You've really chosen to play that down. It's interesting to hear you talk about an area where you really want to suggest the mystery that you're encountering.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things about the darks, always keep in mind that that's where you have less information. So I think that I try to keep that simple. But yeah, and then I like I said, the element of symbolism I read, and when I teach painting, that's one of the things I touch on all the time is what's the symbolic meaning to the painting. And here you're kind of looking up at an angle that's unique. In other words, you're looking in a kind of foreshortened way, looking up toward the sky because of the fact that it's sort of like an arrow taking you up.
Yeah.
So that's how that works. And then this one, this is a very interesting one, Gavin, because I always, being outdoors and painting, one of the things is that you start to come to understand nature. And I think the more you do, the more you start looking at ideas and ask questions. For instance, I always ask questions about the Holstein cows. I know that, when we look at insects, we know how they evolve so that they can disappear against their backgrounds. But the Holstein cows, when you look at a field, boy, do they stand out against that green grass. And I'm always thinking to myself, well, what's the secret to the Holstein cow? And then I realized that they were like clouds in the sky, right?
Uh-huh.
And so here I do a lot with pattern, and I will tell you that I'm a pattern painter. So I really do look for repetition, and that's how I build my ideas. And so this particular cow had two shapes on it, and it helped me to see the two shapes in the sky.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the things about making a design work. So this is another one where the cow is moving through the field and you're just trying to capture it at the moment that you're painting. And you have to just to be accepting of where the painting is at that stage, because you can take it to another stage where it'll be a different painting, but there's something I think authentic and maybe perhaps a little bit more truthful in that you're in this moment and you could take it beyond the moment, but at the same time, that's then a different painting with a different meaning. And so this is where where I have to just play the elements and try to come up with an interesting idea. And this is how this one evolved. So I'll give you an idea. But the cows are always one of my favorites. I moved out here, years ago, and I can tell you that they're great subjects to work with.
Well, you have certainly done a lot with them. You have and there so many great cow paintings, and the spontaneity of capturing, that moment that you are in, rather than overdoing it. I think we see perhaps the most in your paintings of cows, because anybody who's ever tried to paint anything that's moving knows that if you really are going for a literal representation of them, you're either going to drive yourself crazy, or you're going to find a way to communicate the sense of the subject matter without being too literal, or you're going to take a photo and go home and do it in your studio. And I think that these have so much personality, but also so much spontaneity to them that I think that's one of the reasons why people love them so much. I mean, why your cow paintings are so famous is that it really is a sort of glimpse into just living the life that you're living and experiencing the moment that you're experiencing, and not overkilling it.
Well, and I think you touch on something. I mean, we can try to make our lives more interesting, but sometimes it's just that this is the way they are, And I tend to be that way. I tend not to try and go any further. We're going to just discuss these really quickly. I think I want to just talk about these quickly, but I like painting figures also and incorporating the figures into the painting. And this is the other one that's also in Africa at this time. These are big paintings, usually 36 by 48 or bigger, okay? And this is a painting at Tahiti Beach in the Bahamas. And actually I'm painting on the spot, but it's painted a small one, and then I made it into a bigger one like this.
So do you ask these guys to stand there for 5 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour? Or
no, I don't. As a matter of fact, I have to go after them as fast as I can. So it's like, no, there's no way you're going to say, hey, stand there. All right. And you have to compose a painting. And it was very interesting when I composed this one and I painted it. I was in Maui. I took this to a gallery in Maui. And of course, as soon as she saw the painting, she took me as in the gallery there. And I think that the interesting thing about that was that this speaks much more contemporary from the standpoint of abstracting things and really, playing with an idea. But I do like the backlighting of the sunlight. So I think that's one of the other things. But then again, this is that simplicity too, where you're not really making a total, what I would call realistic painting, but try to make a realistic feeling. So,
and there's an absolute, I've started using the word believable. There's an absolute, believability about this, in that that's what's going on when you're at the beach. The figures are in motion. They're not posing. You don't have two on the right, two on the left, and one in the middle. There are people in the background. You're not sure exactly what they're doing. Are they digging? Are they playing? Are they, is the woman handing the other woman a book? It's just all part of one scene that we're experiencing.
yeah, and I think that, my design, just so if you take a look at the elbow of the guy and how the arm bends, it bends back toward the women. All right. I don't do that intentionally, but I can tell you that that's a good compositional element that can connect all three figures.
Hmm.
And I think that this is the kind of thing that I do well when it comes to that. The other ones that I do well is sitting in a ball game and painting. This is in Cuba with gouache and painting the ball game.
This is awesome.
Yeah, it's so much fun for me. I can, as a matter of fact, that signature on there is the center fielder for the Cuban team.
Oh, no way. That's
Yeah.
great.
All right. So, but this is the kind of thing that I think art, can kind of serve.
Yeah.
And this is when I really enjoy being in the moment. So this one and this one, I think this is the one we're going to end with.
This
But
one is great. I mean,
this
that
is
motion on the guy on the right. Whew.
this is painted in a hurricane.
Wow.
So I'm down at the beach in Rehoboth, and I'm doing a workshop, and it's during a weekend in a hurricane, and I've got to put it. Yeah, we're at the beach. All
Oh, it
right.
drives me crazy to paint in the wind. I take my hat off to you for being able to do it. The
This
wind, I
is
mean, I'll paint in the rain or the snow, I don't care. But the wind will drive me nuts. So I salute you for this one.
Well, this is it. And I wanted to end with this one because I wanted you to see that this is my personality. I really do want to paint my personality and what I feel, is exciting. And, I put to do that, I have to put myself in exciting moments. And that's where Turner said, tie yourself to a mast. So that's the way that works. So, yeah, so I hope you get an idea who I am at this point, and I really appreciate you doing this interview for sure.
Oh, I'm dying to get out of here and go paint now. I mean, it's been really exciting and instructive for me to talk to you about this and get a little insight into your process. So thank you for taking the time.
Well, you're welcome, and honestly, I think I love the kind of camaraderie that we have, and the years of experience working together, and this the Yellow Barn means a lot to both of us. So I think this is where we are, and if anything, just want to make everyone aware that we have such great things going on there, and with such great talent, amongst all the instructors.
It's an incredible community that you've built, and as I say to people, you've given us all a place to be artists. Whether you've never painted before, or you've been at it for years. And I went over this in the talk that I did with you, but I just want to thank you for being a great mentor and surrogate uncle over the years, and giving me opportunities at every stage. In high school, in college, as a young adult just getting started, and now. You've given me so many opportunities, and I appreciate every single one. So thank you for everything.
Well, I thank you again, and I think we're, now I guess we'll say goodbye to everybody, and just to say thank you all for being part of this, and Gavin, thank you for running this interview.
Oh, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you. Well, we should do this every couple of months. We'll have a beer next time and talk about some other artists other than you and me.
I think so. That would be a good way of doing it. All right. Well, you have a good day, and we'll talk. All right.
You too. Great to see you. Bye, everybody.